Welcome back to Zodiac Trading channel. So today what we're going to do is I have selected a very well written article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the entire article, and then I'm going to give a little bit of comments of basically how I view the entire Russian-Ukrainian war and how it would be unfolding. It would be only my perspective. So if you have any idea, just let me know. So, okay, we will start right now by reading this article. So, praising Russia's wartime economy. While sanctions have hurt aspects of the Russian economy, high energy prices have helped the countries mitigate the damage. In a nutshell, the Russian economy may shrink only 6% in 2022. Revenue from energy export is up, but other sectors suffer. It is too early to gauge the effectiveness of Western sanctions. It is becoming more and more difficult to assess the state of the Russian economy because there are fewer and fewer official figures. Since April 2022, Russian authorities have stopped providing trade statistics, data on exports, imports, the structure of capital outflow, and the balance of payments are no longer published by the Customs Service and the Central Bank. The foreign trade numbers of the Eurasian Economic Union (EAEU) are no longer accessible. The central bank has also stopped publishing the structure of Russia's international reserves since the end of March. Only their total values have been updated, without detailing assets. The government has also allowed Russian companies to refrain from publishing data until end of 2022. The central bank first permitted banks not to disclose their main financial reporting, and later allowed all financial organizations, including non-state pension funds and insurance companies, to keep management and audit data private. In March, the Russian Aviation Agency stopped publishing statistics on passenger traffic. The main impact of sanctions is expected to hit only in the fall and winter of this year. The official explanation for this is to avoid incorrect estimates, speculations, and discrepancies, and to protect enterprises and specific individuals from sanctions. But, of course, the true purpose is to hide objective information about the deterioration of the economic situation in Russia. What do publicly available numbers show? The Russian Statistical Agency has published data for January-June to June 2022. Industrial production in June 2022 amounted to 98.2% compared to June last year, while transport turnover fell by 5.8%. The volume of retail trade fell by almost 10%. Inflation was 15.9%. Real incomes of the population decreased by 0.8% in the first half of 2022 compared to the first half of 2021. Such figures are not a disaster, although the Russian economy was shrunk, or, as some Russian officials said, has entered a stage of negative growth. This had already happened by the end of April 2022, which can only be explained by the introduction of the whole package of Western economic sanctions in February and March. Prior to that, the Russian economy was growing steadily after the economic downturn of the COVID-19 pandemic. Is it therefore obvious that the sanctions imposed by the West have caused an economic crisis in Russia? However, the situation varies significantly, depends on, depending on the industry. The main export sector, mining, oil, natural gases, coal, and etc., after a slight decline in April, began to grow again in May to June. This is due to high oil and gas prices on world markets, as well as these delayed sanctions in this sector. The EU oil embargo, with several exemptions, will come into effect only at the end of 2022. Meanwhile, sanctions on Russian gas are still being discussed, and Europe only stopped buying Russian coal on August the 10th. For manufacturing industry that depend on imported components and equipment, official data show a serious drop. See table below. Nevertheless, as of July 1st, 2022, the Russian economy was not in a catastrophic state. This is also confirmed by the fact that there were very few large social protests in the country. Why is the Russian economy so stable? First, it should be noted that the main impact of sanctions is expected to hit only in the fall and winter of this year. This is the result of the long negotiation over sanctions among Western countries and the subsequent preparatory periods before their imposition. Second, Russia still receives very significant funds from oil and gas exports. These flow even increased in the first months of the war. Russia earned $47 billion from the sale of energy resources to Europe in March and April, the first 2 months after the start of special operation in quote unquote in Ukraine. Because of higher fuel prices, exports have brought the country twice as much revenue as in the same period last year, despite the decline in gas exports to Western countries by almost 28% since the beginning of 2022. Under the influence of massive Russian state propaganda, a large part of society believes that the situation is heading in the right direction. Some 68% of respondents were optimistic, according to surveys conducted by independent sociological Levada Center in July 2022. President Vladimir Putin's standing was even higher. 83% of respondents said they approved of his performance. Mitigating factors. There are two factors that may mitigate the pace of the economic decline this year and the next. The first is an increase in trade with countries that have not imposed sanctions on Russia, like Turkey. In June 2022, exports of goods from Turkey to Russia, $791.4 million, had increased by 46% year-on-year and by 52% compared to the previous month. The June volume is at its highest since the beginning of 2010. Turkey and Russia have agreed to bring their trade turnover to $100 billion. Such indicators appear in the roadmap for economic cooperation between the two countries. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said following a meeting with President Putin on August 5, 2022, according to him, the parties intend to develop cooperation in such areas as energy, trade, tourism, and agriculture. Following the meeting, the two sides agreed to start partial payments for Russian gas in rubles. Another example, from May the 27th to June the 15th of 2022, the amount of coal India purchased from Russia increased nearly sixfold, and oil imports were 31 times what they were last year. Russia offers Indian importers discounts of up to 30%. In addition, Russian sellers accept payments in Indian rupees and United Arab Emirates dirhams. There will likely be no economic catastrophe this year or next. The second means of mitigating the economic consequences of Western sanctions are so-called parallel imports. The imports of goods into a country without the consent of the manufacturer or the copyright holder. This mechanism is dubbed as parallel, since the import is carried out simultaneously with deliveries from authorized dealers. It is significant that such imports are officially recognized by the Russian government. A special federal law was even adopted for these phenomena. Now, the law protects Russian companies from importing goods without the permission of the copyright holder. The Ministry of Industry and Trade has approved a list of goods that it will be concluded in parallel imports. So far, it contains about 100 categories and include brands like BMW, Toyota, Audi, Renault, Nissan, Apple, Samsung, Sony, HP, and Intel, as well as equipment for different industries, clothes, shoes, and cosmetics. On August 15, it was announced that the volume of parallel imports to Russia since the law was introduced in May had reached almost $6.5 billion. By the end of this year, this figure is expected to grow to $16 billion. Scenarios. Russia's Ministry of Economic Development expects that in 2022 and 2023, the country's economy will shrink by 4.2 and 2.7% respectively, and only in 2024 it will resume growth by 3.7%. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) published a similar forecast in July, predicting a drop of 6% instead of 8.5%, as was expected in April. At the same time, the forecast for the 2023 worsened. If in April the IMF talked about a decrease of 2.3%, now it's 3.5%. According to the results of the second quarter, the Russian economy shrank less than previously expected. Exports of oil and products from the non-energy sector performed better than forecasts predicted. The IMF notes that domestic demand has remained stable due to the localization to the effect of sanctions on the domestic financial sector and better than expected state of the labor market. There will likely be no economic catastrophe this year or the next. Instead, negative growth is expected to continue, which will probably affect almost all sectors of the economy, including extraction of raw materials. The economy will likely to become more dysfunctional due to the acute shortage of investments and lack of new technologies. Well, I believe this is a very rather well written article, and I can see that there are lots of good data and a lot of good charts right here. So as you can see from different tables right here. So I have three opinion, I have three views according to this article. So first of all, I believe right now Russia is pretty much cornered because the Ukrainian war, this invasion, it seemed to be failing right now. You can see Russian troops are basically retreating on daily basis, and Vladimir Putin is of course facing tremendous stress, and while in the international order, right? Because a lot of people think Putin right now he's failing, so Russia at the moment is no longer a military big power. It is still considerable a big power, but not as big as it was as Soviet Union as the Russia before, because Russia paid a dear price for invading Ukraine, and this happened. This actually creates a lot of parallel consequences, such as a lot of the allies of Russia now they are kind of losing control, kind of losing that kind of grip from the Russia. Russia seemed to losing those power, controlling these its alliance and also these different nations. So it seems that Russia would have lower international, I would say, bargain power, right? So basically, Russia right now it's facing with a dramatic pressure, mainly from international kind of trends and from the different governments, Vladimir Putin would probably need to resign from his position, or he's probably going to get assassinated. I think that would be his, I believe that Vladimir Putin himself would have pretty much very bad, I would say he would have a very bad ending if situation like this continues. Okay, and my second thought is that the article is right about this wartime economy system right now. Russia is basically facing. I think Russia is not like falling apart that fast, not at such pace, because Russia right now has energy income. It sells a lot of energy in different currency. That is a very pretty smart way to kind of avoid being sanctioned by the US, because if you want, say, for example, if you're selling oil, you're selling natural gas for Indian rupee, then you can say, okay, right now I'm gonna need some clothes, I'm gonna need some of the cheap products that you are making, and because right now I have all these rupees, so you can consider that I will pay in these rupee, and I will get all these materials that I want, and then you can ship it to my own country. That would be a pretty smart way to avoid the sanction. But still, we need to focus that we need to be aware that the sanction will be launched during the fall and the winter. So the actual the actual damage, the actual consequences, we can only assess that kind of consequence only after that winter. We will see how Russian economy is impacted by these U.S. sanction. The basically kick Russia out of this international trade system. And the last thing I would have to agree with the article is that um, the Russia right now is facing they have tremendous I would say in not like transparent. It's considered as a black box because it lacks of transparency. You cannot see its data, you cannot see its reserves. So if Russia economy deteriorate faster than we have predicted, because the sanction will only occur after the fall and the winter, then we can only then we can assess the actual consequences. But I afraid that the consequence for Russian economy system is going to be catastrophic in the future 5 years, because basically Vladimir Putin because of Vladimir Putin, Russia is now away from the Western technologies, and also all these uh, I would say internet service fundament like facilities, and they are away from the international global trade system. So I assume that the outcome for Russia will be pretty bad. So thank you guys for watching. If you like the content, please give me a sub and press that like button, and also click that little bell for me. So I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.